Well, if you're from Maine, you probably have heard the term lumberjills. In fact, lumberjills, officially known as the Women's Timber Corps, were the unsung heroes of World War II, working in forestry while the men were away at war. Well, today these lady lumberjacks compete all over the world. A new documentary in the making hopes to shine a light on the woman behind the axes. They compete at fairs and festivals across the country. These logging sport athletes are chopping, sawing, log rolling, and axe throwing. Many of them are moms with full-time jobs.
They're doctors, lawyers, CEOs.
Each woman has their own story of why they compete. Maine native Brianna Wing hopes to bring their stories to life in a new documentary.
I am not what people expect when I say that I'm a lumberjill. They're just like, a lumberjill? What is that?
Axe Woman, the Modern Lumberjill, is what she calls a high-octane documentary that will explore the intersection of feminism and athleticism of lumberjills from across the country and right here in Maine.
Mike and I will throw axes quite often at home after dinner.
Featured in the film is world champion and founder of the Axe Women Loggers of Maine, Alyssa Weatherby.
Just gained about 50 feet. That's awesome.
Weatherby is the only person to log roll across both the Mississippi and Missouri rivers.
Her world championships are small potatoes compared to her love of wanting to continue educating people. And that spirit is also what I want to showcase in the documentary.
My favorite event is modified chainsaws.
Wing and her co-producer, Indiana Underhill, have compiled more than 10 hours of footage, but they say they're far from being done. To share this documentary with the world, they need donations.
It's redefining gender norms about women's equality and environmental stewardship. And so that's why we're now trying to fundraise to continue filming, because it started as a small project, but I realized there's a big, important story to tell.
You can help make Brianna's dream a reality by making a charitable donation at axewomenfilm.com.
I would like to have this film and also leave a legacy, leaving the world a better place and, inspire people to want to do the same.